Hey everyone, so while we're on the topic of paddling minutes, we might as well look at the fight statistics for this year. And now these obviously aren't final for the season because there's still four or 5 days of games left. Not really counting Sunday. That last game between Boston and Florida, I don't think is even going to be really worth having. But there's still a few days of games left. So let's look at where I don't think the fight statistics are going to change that much. There might be a few more fights this year, but nothing that's going to drastically change anything. So far this season, there's been 279 fights in the NHL for a fight rate of .23 per game. That's way down from last year, which saw well over almost 400 fights, over 350, and a fight rate of .30. So fighting's dropped a lot this year. It's the lowest fight rate since the early 1960s, and the first time, it's the first time that there's been under 300 fights in an NHL season, back since, first time since there were, way less than 31 teams in the league. It's been decades since there's been a season with less than 300 fights. So fighting continues to decline, and unfortunately, I think that's going to be a trend that continues in the coming years. I hope it's not, but I think that's the way it's going to go, and I think that is a very bad direction for the league, entertainment-wise. And the games are better when they're physical and nasty, and there's people who hate each other and teams who hate each other, and they fight about it. And games are just better that way. And there's less and less of those games as the years go on, and it's really unfortunate, I think. But anyway, here's the top 10 list for fights for teams. This is team fighting majors. Florida is far and away the leader, blowing everyone else out of the water with 49 fights this season. They'll probably get to 50. I figure they'd get at least one more the rest of the year. But yeah, they've accounted for almost 20% of the fights this season, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's a lot of games where there's been fights. It's been Florida involved. Next, second place is Calgary with 31, still miles behind Florida. Calgary had a disappointing season, especially the last month or so where they've dropped out of a playoff spot, but they have a fairly tough lineup. Third, Anaheim, another team with a pretty tough lineup. They've had 29, a lot of those coming against the LA Kings this year. Dallas is in fourth with 27. Boston and Edmonton are tied for fifth with 26. Washington is seventh with 22. Tom Wilson has 13 of those 22 fights, so he really carries the load there. And then three teams tied with 20 to finish out the top 10. Detroit, Los Angeles, and Nashville all have 20 fights, and many of the Kings' fights have come against Anaheim. So that's the nastiest rivalry in the league right now, and has been for the last couple of years. But fighting is just way down, team-wise and player-wise. So let's look at the players. Michael Haley leads the way with 22. He's got way more than anyone else. He's the big reason why Florida is so far ahead of everyone else as well. Second, tied for second, Kody Mccloud and Tom Wilson both have 13. And that's it for double-digit fighters this year. No one else has double-digit fighting majors, which is kind of wild for me, because I think last year 9 guys had double-digit fighting majors, and this year only 3. And I don't think anyone else gets there. Certainly not any of the guys with 7 are going to have 3 more fights. Chris Thorburn isn't going to have 2 more fights in 3 games, I don't think. So he's going to finish in single digits too. Just a lot of the players who had double-digit fights last year don't this year. So that's that's why that's happened. And just then after Thorburn is Hamonic, Jamie Alexiak, and Austin Watson, all with 7. And there's a bunch of guys, 10 actually, with 6. And that's a very long list of guys with 6 fights. So just guys aren't as active as they used to be, and that's a big reason why the fight rate's down so much, and why there's so much less fighting is guys who normally fight haven't this year. Guys like Chris Stewart, Kyle Clifford, Matt Martin. It's a long list. I can keep on going. I'm just trying to think of guys off the top of my head who. Jared Bowl got waived and didn't play enough to have that many fights. There's a lot of guys who are normally very active fighters who haven't been as active this year, and that's why there's been a lot less fighting. And unfortunately, I think that's the way it continues to trend. But that's just what I think. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Links are in the description. Help spread the word about this channel. We want it to grow. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.